Hi everyone, and welcome to the Pisces Guide to Pop Culture. I'm of course your host TJ, coming to you today to talk about Was Willem, the new novel from M.R. Carey, who I have never read before I finished this book, but I saw this at my local library, as tends to be the case when I find new books that I have never, and authors that I've never experienced before. And I was reading, first of all, the title is a bit strange. It's not really what you see in fantasy naming conventions these days. And also, like, the description where it's basically about the resurrected corpse of a boy that dies of a fever who kind of leads this village against a sinister magician. It all seemed very strange, eldritch, sometimes funny, which it is. And these are all things that I think the book itself does really well. In fact, it's one of the best fantasy books that I've read for a while. I've been reading a lot of romantasy, which I love that genre. I write in that genre. But I wanted something a little more, like, unusual, something that I hadn't read before. So I thought, well, I'll give this a try. And it immediately cast a spell on me. And part of it stems from its sort of generic, how would I want to describe it? It puts its toes in many different genres. There's obviously the fantasy component. There's a little bit of, more than a little bit of horror to it as well. There's some historical fiction, because it takes place during the time known as the Anarchy in English history, which we might know as the sort of inspiration for not Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. And so, it's a period of lawlessness, of unsettled political life in England, which sort of enables some elements of the plot. So there are some spoilers, but you know that going in. So it is, as I said, about Was Willem, who is the resurrected body of a teenager who dies of a fever. And so, because of his resurrection at the hands of Caradoc Kane, the magician, he has sort of supernatural strength. He can, recover very easily from wounds. And he ends up making friends with a bunch of other sort of magical misfits, Anna and her brother Kel, who are shapeshifters, and as it turns out, the descendants of angels and their human wives, essentially. There's Peter Floodfoot, who's sort of a water sprite. There's a sort of sinister demon kind of woman called Jill. There's also Morjune, the ghost of a witch, and Betheli, who's the ghost of a child that Caradoc Kane sacrifices. So there's a lot going on in this book, but it is ultimately about the timeless striving of good and evil, and the ability of society's misfits and those who are cast out of the normal run of human affairs to actually fight back against the rapacious and frankly, those who would use their power to oppress others. Because Caradoc Kane is a wizard/magician. He ends up finding the buried body of this buried angel, rebel angel. And in this cosmogony, the angels are the ones who created humanity and Earth. And so there's a lot, there's a lot going on. It's a rather short book. It's only about 290 odd pages. But man, Carey packs so much in here. There's a lot of richly told action, and it's all told through Was Willem's point of view. So it's all sort of mediated through this kind of Frankenstein's monster figure who is very intelligent, very witty, and has been gifted at the end of the book with the ability to sort of see events that happened that he didn't partake in, which is why he can narrate so much of what happens. And so, I think that it's a very timely novel. I think it's one of the things, that's what I love about fantasy sometimes, is it manages to hold up a mirror to our world and be like, we have our own Caradoc Kanes in our world who would exploit the resources of others, including actual human bodies. And that's the thing. I mean, Caradoc Kane is a true, evil villain. He's terrible and sort of rapacious in his pursuit of knowledge and power, and he'll do anything and everything to get it, which makes him so satisfying to read, but also makes his ultimate defeat all that much more satisfying. And, I've talked extensively here at Pisces Guide and elsewhere about the power of escapist fiction to sort of give us the sense that the world could be different, that it doesn't have to be the shithole that it is. And I think that that's why Was Willem is so uniquely powerful and even quite moving. I think that there's something really empowering about this idea of 7 magical misfits, some of whom are revenants, some of whom are shapeshifters, some who are ghosts, some who are something else, that can strike back and make the world a better place, even if, as is the case, the people of the village where they live or have lived are basically awful and shitty as well. There's no gratitude. There's not a lot of gratitude for these people, with some exceptions. So I just think that there's a lot in this book that's worth reading. There's a journey to hell. It captures the flavor and the strangeness of medieval life, while also being very relevant, as I said, to the present. So in that sense, it's quite a brilliant book, and I really highly recommend it. I think you'll get a lot out of it. I have a more extended review at my newsletter for paid subscribers, omnivorous.substack.com. But for now, I mean, I just think for this bite-sized review, that gives you a good sense of what the book is and its flavor and why I think it's worth a read. You know, I enjoy books that play with genre, and this one does that very effectively while being very thoroughly fantasy. It's like it's a historically grounded fantasy that has a lot going on, but still feels really coherent and cohesive. And I hope that Carrie gives us more stories set in this world, because I really think that there's a lot more. And I would definitely want to hear more from Once Was Willem, who makes for a fantastic protagonist. So that's all I have for today's episode of the Pisces Guide to Pop Culture. It definitely gets my seal of approval. So once again, that is Once Was Willem from Orbit, who really knocks it out of the park with almost every book. So if you haven't, give it a read. I think you'll very much enjoy it. So anyway, that's all for today's edition. I'm, of course, your host, TJ. Take care, y'all.